Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa, and today is part 4 of what was a 3-part video series, but realized we needed a 4th part to finish. So this whole video is about taking on a big project and breaking it down into smaller bites so that you as the beginner and me as your teacher can have a more leisurely, reflective, calmer experience creating a large landscape. This is a really fun way to break into bigger paintings, and it gives you an idea of how you can take on bigger projects into smaller bits. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's been just hanging in here from part 1 to part 2 to part 3, now to part 4 as we put this landscape in. Today I expect to finish the flowers and add the lens flare, and where we end today is where we're probably going to end today, because I feel like we've really been in the forest for a minute and it's time to walk out to a new scene pretty soon because I think every painting has an energy and it has a time, and so that's something else to think about in the creative process, is that sometimes our creative projects, they have an amount of energy we have for them as well, and not over pushing those limits or barriers is very important. But I wanted to take this painting along further to have it be more resolved and more complete, and like, I don't want it to be the reference, but I want it to have more of the reference in color and in detail in it. So that's why we're going along. We're going to be breaking this down into steps again. So I break down not only the videos into parts right now, into live stream parts, but we're breaking down each video into steps, and those get timestamped after. We'll go over the materials again. I'm going to cover every part of the description. If you check the description below, you're going to see a lot of links. Open it up to more. For you guys who are like, I need a reference, go check out my Patreon. I made a public post. It's another place to be able to get the traceable, and it's another place to be able to get the bisected reference. I'm not like distributing it to, I'm following the rules of the licensing company, which is Shutterstock, if you just wanted to license your own. But basically it's like I can have a reference for my students, but I can't be a licensor to you guys, if that makes sense. But I am allowed to use a marked up one like this one as reference. It's a weird deal. You can get that over on Patreon. It's free, even though it's over on Patreon, because it's unlocked. Because I like to be like that. Oh, and I know I've said it a lot. This was not a false flag to my Patreon page. This just was a convenient place to put those things. It is very, very, very convenient. So that was 100% of what that is. Also down in the description are all the materials, links to the website, links to my other social media where you can share art. So there's just a lot of extra information and quick links to all 4 parts of the video. So if you're trying to find all 4 parts and you're like, where were all of those? I don't remember the playlist, or I didn't save the playlist. Save the playlist. You would be able to, I just whispered so creepily in their ear. Save the playlist.
It's fine.
You would be able to save that and be able to reference and find your way through again. Sometimes on YouTube, that's one of the reasons I hadn't done a lot of multi-part videos, is sometimes on YouTube it's hard to find other parts again. So this is a really great way of finding all the parts. Now I'm going to go over the materials, and then we're just going to hop right on in because we have some painting to do today. Painting to do today. We have painting to do today, and I'm so excited to see Janine and Elizabeth and Ramona and Lindsay and Grace and Elaine and Deborah and Brittany. You know, if you come to the live show, you might get a shout out. Remember, if you guys have questions, to put those all in caps. Either one of the moderators, they're not art cops, they're actual just hosts and ambassadors. They'll help you find the resources that you're looking for. They're just volunteers and people who watch the show a lot, and so they may be able to find those resources, but you might also get your questions answered live in the show. That's another thing I'm going to say. You guys have been super generous with super chat recently, and I so appreciate it, but don't ever feel like you've got to use that feature to get your questions answered. We just answer questions here. So thank you so much for all the generosity recently, but just a gentle reminder that you just all in caps for questions if you just have a question. And if you're here for the replay, just put your question in the comments. I know everyone's like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm, but over here, comments are for questions. And so, like, it's nice if you leave a comment for the algorithm, but actually we use them as a way for you to communicate with me directly. So if you have a question, leave it in the comments. I try to get into my YouTube channel every single day. And I don't get every question answered, but I do look every day trying to answer as many as I physically can in my time. Carol G says, is this the final painting installment to the Bluebells? I went out and bought a Stay Wet palette so I can do the painting later. Yeah, this is going to be the last one. Where we end today, we end. Then we're going to take on another project. I'm thinking of different things. I'm working on a dragon as per request from one of the community members. And I'm thinking it might be time to do white horses again soon. I'm not really sure. So let me know if you have ideas in the comments after the show. Like, let me know there what you think. Another reason we use comments. Materials. 9x12 canvas. I also keep around, and you will see sometimes during different parts of the live stream, you will see my 1264 multimedia pad. This lets me demonstrate techniques to you guys. It also is a great place for you to practice techniques, color mixes, see how your brush quality is, all kinds of things. We fill these up with all sorts of activities and things that we have going on. And I like multimedia because it lets me do varieties of things in it for different stuff. So that's why I have that. And the size on that is 9x12. You could use a different size, but I get asked that question a lot. This is the Fabriano 1264 because that's when they were founded in 1264. And they're not just saying that like some companies do, like we were founded in something, but we've been bought 25 times. This is a heritage company. They've been in the same location making paper for 750 years. That's just a different kind of commitment to the process is all I'm saying. A Stay Wet palette, I have Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Quinacridone Magenta, Cad Red Medium, Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Green, Mars Black, Burnt Sienna, Yellow Ochre, Dioxazine Purple, Titanium White. And I have my Satin Glazing Liquid that slows down the drying time of my paint, makes it dry a little bit slower. It allows me to have longer blendability. It improves the brushability of the paint, and it extends the color for longer. So that's why I use that product. And I only use the one from Golden because it's the only one that does all those things in one bottle. All right. I think we're ready for step one, which is going to be fun. I'm going to put my glasses on.
It's not step one. I've got to go find out where.
Or step 7. It was 16 or 17, I think. And Claire says, are your bluebells out now? Yeah. Where I'm at in Michigan, little bluebells are blooming underneath all my little bushes. And my neighbor has a gorgeous, gorgeous yard of them. All right. Let me get this on and not lose my mic. I use my glasses so I can see better, getting over my canvas. And let's get back into our little shadow area here. I want to test out one of my brushes to see how it's doing with the bluebells. I'm going to use a 0 Raphael Dauphiny D brush. A D brush is a brush that has a filbert shape and a round blender shape in one brush. You could just use a filbert or a round here. So don't feel like you have to have this brush. I'm just letting you know what I'm using. And it's a small brush because I want to work some details, and it's a hog bristle brush because I want it to be a little bit scritchy. And I'm thinking that I want to hit this sort of highlight in the shadow with my phthalo blue is what I'm thinking I'm going to do. So I'm going to take a smidge of my white over to my phthalo blue and come over here and test this. Yeah, this is what I want. And I'm going to add some highlights over here to the flowers that I painted a little bit earlier. So this will still feel like it's in shadow, right? But a little bit of value or light quality will help us see the shapes and perception of our flowers. This is a little trick that I like where you use color theory. Ooh, I like this as a bluebell brush. Very much. That's making me happy. I feel like, yes, you are the brush we have been looking for. See how that's giving us nice little bluebell clusters?
It really does.
Maybe a little bit more out here. Few in here. I mean, this area is very, very much in shadow, so that's why I'm like keeping it kind of in shadow. I get just the smallest amount of white just to reveal the phthalo color, but not enough to make a bright highlight. Just picking that up. Now I'm going to kind of skip where that tree is because its little shading might still run down here. Yeah, that's working out really, really well. So today we're just going to put in the flowers in the lens flare. Just something to do. Talk about what we want to do next. I have a nice reference with two white horses facing each other that was sort of fun. Got a nice rose reference that I'm thinking about. I'm working on a challenging 2-hoot, which may be elevated to a 3-hoot, but really rewarding dragon painting that reminds me so much of, if you remember back when I did the mermaid flipping backwards. That one was a really fun one to do. And I think this would pair well with it. We haven't done a fantasy painting in a second, so I like doing those on occasion. And I like adding this blue to the shaded area because it's really bringing them out. All right. And then listening to everybody in chat. I love watching everybody in chat. Yeah, Luna Bell's a little bit home today, under the weather. Let's add a little of these in shadow here at the front. Doesn't that add some fun color? Now I may come back through and strengthen some of the shadows running into this space. Really happy with this decision. So if you're wondering what this was again, this is the Zero Raphael d'Artagnan D brush 3593. You should be able to get these in Europe pretty easily because Raphael's another heritage company, 250 years making brushes, same family. They make a really high quality brush. Like you apprentice for a shocking number of years before they let you make any brushes for them. And they have the last European apprenticeship in brushes like out there. I don't know. That was fascinating to me when I read that.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Cad Red Medium and Cad Red Light?
Cad Red Medium is not quite as orange. It's a little richer in the red. Cad Red Light tends to be almost a pyro orange. And Cad Red Deep is a much deeper, almost burgundy orange. And if you go hue, if you add the word hue to it, then there's no cadmium pigment in it, and it drops the cost of the paint down significantly. But the color stays the same. And I do kind of recommend that for beginners. Then you don't have to worry about well, just generally all paint safety comes down to don't breathe, set fire to, or eat your paint. So you wouldn't think it, but believe it or not, even lead paint is not that dangerous until you decide to set it on fire, eat it, and drink it. Just on the canvas, it really isn't a bother to you. I'm just coming up into my shadows with my little D brush here, and I'm liking that result a lot. I may want to shade some of this a little bit more than I did, but right now I'm just playing with this.
Can you
color.
Can you create Cad Light from Cad Medium or Cad Deep? Or
you can create Cad Light very easily from Cad Medium by adding Cad Yellow to it. Cad Deep, that one I have found to be more of a pigment-based one, but I can get the hue by adding just a titch, and I mean just a titch of a blue into the red. But it tends just to go a little more brick-like. It's like a brick. Not like the wind, like the brick. So I'm just adding a little shading up into that, into those little bluebells. Now I can come over here into my purple, my dioxazine purple, like you do, and even get a little bit of my magenta. A little more of my magenta. And down here where I want to have a little more blended sort of shading, I'm going to come in here and kind of play with that a bit. See, I'm playing with it a bit, kind of making a more of a dapply light going on. Just making the color a little richer. That's the wonderful thing about this, is just playing with our forest floor a little bit. Now I'm going to add a little bit more red and then just a smidge more white. Got too much white going in there, so I'm going to playing a bit with the purple, so it's more purple to my eye. There we go. Filling up this area with the purple. Now that doesn't mean I'm not coming back and really playing with my highlights. But I'm just making sure that we get the sense of these flowers coming through here. Maybe a little more purple for underneath this tree. Still quite dark. Just through here, finding all the shadows. Look at that, looking just better and better and better as we play with it, as we resolve it. All right. And then can you create cad red hues from primary red? Yes. So anytime you're working with a cad red hue, what you're working with is a red. If you look at the difference between this magenta and this cad red hue here on my palette, you'll notice this is much more like the kind of red you would think of for fire or sunset. And if you had a primary red, that would give you an idea that you might want to just add a little yellow to your red. And it would work just fine. These are good questions today. I like that very much. I might come in and get just a little more white on my brush. A little bit up there. Ooh, looking good. Just dappling up some of this light up there. Oh, Claire 461 says I can almost smell the bluebell wood. Yeah, it's just... Wouldn't this be a lovely place to take a walk? Nice walk with your dog. Bring a little light down here. This is sort of a dappling light that's coming down. And that's what we're trying to create, is a little bit of a dappling in the light. Now I may have to come back into my tree later, but I want a little dappling of the light along that little tree. So I'm going to add that. Now we have an interesting bit of light that comes across here that I've got to find a way to get in that is going to help be informed by the lens flare. And then we'll be sure and add back in when we're ready. I'm going to add a little more white to it. There we go. Just a little bit back there. This will look a lot better because we'll have our little lens flare. Kind of back there at the back. So think of this as like a light that's spilling through. A little more white on here. I'm going to add a little bit of white to this edge. There we go. So that's what we're trying to pull in, is that dappled light. I can always get a little more purple over here and a little more magenta as I work through. You can see get back to that original color pretty easily. One of the places I want to fill in a little more too is up front. That's nice. That's lovely. Just adding little bits of light. Back onto the brush. Dappling it forward. All right. Now, I want to rinse out and sort of take that in. I want you to take that in for a second. And I want to give John a chance to come back down and let you know that the moderators right now are sharing links. So I have a free traceable on the website. So if you weren't up for doing the full draw through part of it, you could use the traceable to make that much easier, and that's just a free to download off the website. I also have that currently at a post on Patreon, so if you were just heading over there today, that would be something that you could find there under the they have this new thing where you can follow people for free, and so like you don't have to be a patron to go over there and do that. That's another place to get the traceable, just depending on whatever's easier for you. Then the description has a bunch of links. The other thing I want us to pay attention to is how we're feeling, and make sure that we're stretching our neck and back in a comfortable way, a way that's, you know, not out of tune with our bodies, but that we're paying attention to the hunch of our shoulders and the hunch of our back, especially when we're doing long duration detail work like this. Because right now we're creating little exaggerations and moments in our light and in our painting. So we're going to be focused in on it, and it's important to be able to open up and make sure that you're taking care of your body. Is this a 2-hoot or a 3-hoot? Asked Lindsay Michelle. So what I would say is John's going to come down and give us another step before we continue on. And the reason is that we've just done a lot of work, and we want to break it up into segments so you don't get lost in the steps. So steps aren't so long, step 18, that you guys get lost in them. We're going to continue on. I would say the total painting by the time you do all 4 parts would count as a 3-hoot. But the goal of breaking this big whale of a painting into smaller parts is to drop each individual step down into a lower hoot, because it's not asking so much on you on time or technique. when I rate a painting's difficulty, I look at the students' materials that they have to purchase. I look at the number of hours and completion for the project and the number of techniques that they have to be able to do in a single project. Now, when we're sitting down in one sitting doing a painting and we're there for 4 hours, that's a 3 hoot, right? Because you've got to have stamina, you've got to be able to hold your space, you've got to be able to take in a lot of information, and you don't have a lot of time necessarily unless you're very good at slowing down and digesting yourself to digest it. But when we do it in this manner, it actually makes a bigger project an easier project to do. So I would say it builds up. And Carol's like, this would be a 4 hoot. For every part there should be a hoot, says Carol G. That's a very good suggestion. So yeah, you could feel like, oh, I did a 4 hoot painting when you did this because you did 4 parts. This is a big project. What I hope you guys learn is there's no project so big you can't do it. It's just sometimes the way projects are presented can become so large that it's harder to do. I'm going to get back into my phthalo blue over here with a little smidge of my white. And I'm still using my D brush number 0, this one right here. And I'm adding little bits of this kind of light that's in the shadow. But it's very light coming back. There isn't a lot of it coming back. Just adding it in. As we're just dappling the light on this side of the painting. And we're going to be just kind of coming through and doing the same through the whole work. Again, you could use a round brush like we did last time the whole way through. You could use a filbert. You could use a fan. You could use a Deerfoot stippler. There are a lot of brushes that would help you create these textures and these moments in the painting. Come over into my purple a little bit. As I'm going down and getting a nice dark purple involved. Rinse out some because I don't want to lose it. Let's grab our docs. Small amounts of dioxazine, my friends. Small amounts, because it's such a powerful color. It's such a powerful color. I put the whole palette out for the painting today because that's what we have for the whole thing. We don't necessarily have all this today, but my last palette got overly wet and it all ran together, and I didn't want you guys to be reset into less colors. Because sometimes I will sit down and do a painting session after I do live stream, and I'll just use up my paint. I'm just adding a lot more magenta into this. Up here, I've got a little more of this sort of dappled shadow. This is really just about the over canopy. I think I might be a little more particular here around these little trees. Getting this little purple in. Showing that it's a nice little shading. And I can come back with a little bit of light, but this way at least I'm getting this side of my little forest very, very purple. I can still see my little light path, so I won't get lost. But I know this overall side has a lot more shading in it. And then this center has a lot more light, so I want to kind of play with that. Add a little bit of white. Maybe a little magenta. A little more white. Showing a little bit up in that corner. Little bits of it coming between these little tree gaps, right? Perhaps a little bit right there, kind of peeking through. And then we'll plant some more flowers down here. I may have to bring some green back in if I feel like I want it, but add a little more shading up into that. Just making sure our purple is more purple. Oh, that's lovely. Let's call that step for a second. Step 19. I think it's Ig Erdem. I hope I have that right. Or it could be Ish, but I think it's Ig Erdem. The last time I think I caught one of these streams was 6 years ago. Everything changed since then. Coming here and finding it untouched brought me a nice calmness. Thank you both. Yeah, we are definitely consistent in spite of all of YouTube's advice. Like, even when we do a short video, we're like, you get the painting in a time lapse with piano because it lets you see what's involved. But there's still always a full real-time lesson associated with it. We're very much like who we are. And I think we'll probably be here in 10 more years. Mm-hmm. Let's meet back. We'll come back before then. But, let's keep meeting back because I think you're going to find that we do this because this is it's just a wonderful thing to do. We're so grateful to be able to do it. So it's good to see you again. Yeah. And then I want to see, I think I saw another one. Lindsay Michelle, can you trace or draw? I heard you can trace or draw, but don't do it the same way. Google created like to do the same colors as they have the pattern. Well, I think that there's a lot of ways to get an image on a canvas. There's projection, there's gridding, there's a transfer tracing method. There's a freehanding method. There's so many different methods of doing that really all you're learning is technique. And I think if you always see it as technique, you'll always be in the right headspace to do it. Sometimes people will try to make you feel guilty about your technique because they will have a perception that your technique somehow makes the art less, which is silly since it's all just technique and it was created. Like, we're not inventing the techniques in general right now. These were invented by artists whose great shoulders we are standing on. I think we can feel pretty confident that if it was good enough for Michelangelo, it's probably good enough for us. We could probably, if it was good enough for a pearl earring, it's probably, good enough for us. And that's sort of how I tried to look at it, in Vallejo, like Robert Vallejo. If it was good enough for him, it is good enough for me. And that's sort of how I always go forward in that. All right, let's continue on with another step. I'm going to add some.
Did we just not just do?
We did. You're right.
Okay.
We did.
Just wanna make sure I'm not
I just got
overstepping.
monologuing like a villain, and I'm making some blue again. So I'm taking my titanium white over to my phthalo blue. And so I have some highlights in my shadows. But that's how I'm doing them, is with my phthalo blue. So they stay cool. And I'm coming across and just capturing the tops of some of our little bluebell friends. When I was in France, in Carcassonne, the forest did this across the carpeting of all the floors, and it was extraordinary. For those that are blessed enough to live in France, they know that there's some beautiful, beautiful ancient medieval, forests, probably older than medieval, and they often have massive canopies of these flowers that have been there for as long as there have been people. Like, it's really quite extraordinary when you realize the depth of time you're standing in, the scale of time.
Right.
I think that's what I very much like about a European sensibility, is that sense of time and scale. Add a little bit right here, pulling those out, catching the top, all the little color that our flowers have. Isn't that lovely?
It is lovely.
It's just lovely. Wouldn't it be lovely? So yeah, I'm excited about what we're going to paint next. Thinking about it, doing lots of little studies. It's so much harder to design original work than to work from references, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the dragon is really quite a lot of mental, especially right now with everything with my medication and everything. It's interesting to be like deciding spatially where objects are going to be, what layers are going to be there. Not getting in over my head. I might share work in progress later to show you guys what I'm working on so you can see it. Okay. Let us
Yes.
do that as shadow and create a new step for the highlight. I'm going to add a little bit of white and a little bit of magenta to my dioxazine purple. Maybe even a little more. So sometimes finding that value is the challenge. I always like to tell John I'm value challenged. There we go. Just little bits of dapples of light is what we're looking for. Loading up my brush, making sure the load is nice. Now you'll notice I'm not solid down the path. I'm catching highlights like the light's hitting the tops of flowers and the flowers are growing in uneven patches.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. I suppose in an act of shameless self-promotion, I'll mention I have an art store and I sell this brush in the art store. If you're like, I know you say I don't have to have that brush, but I'd really like to have that brush. It's at my art store, which is the number 0 Raphael d'Octany de Brush. De Brush. I love saying it that way. De Brush. And you can always find it there. If you're in Europe, I would recommend, and you can shout out your local art store. If you have an art store you know carries these, and you're in, in South America or Europe, like, I would definitely like, shout out your local art store there. I think Jackson's carries them, and I think I would check the Sydney art store if you were in Australia. It's so weird how I've become aware of different little art stores globally. It's important that we lighten up the bluebells through here because they are quite highlighted. We even have probably another little highlight up from where we're at.
Yep.
To think about. Just trying to create little random patterns of little clusters of flowers like the forest floor would have. Little ups and downs.
Yeah.
Leaving lots of room for the dark to show through because that's what's going to give our canvas form. Heather C., thank you so much for the super chat sticker. I really appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you so.
I have some new pictures to share with you of our fur friends that John may share later in the show. If he's up for it. I don't know where he's at. He's had a busy day. And then we can all talk about our studio companions. The newest story is that we found a new game last night, as I'm highlighting for the 2 new kittens, is that we took a laundry basket and put it over a ball. And the girl kitten, Noki, just went wild, running around the basket. And then the 2 of them got in there and they just invented a whole game about this ball trapped under a basket. And it's really sort of wonderful because Jenna Bug had sent a bunch of new toys, and so they've been really excited about that. But it was also like wonderful to see that they were just making up games as they went for reasons to make up games. And I think that's kind of wonderful when you see that. We got to remember that these wonderful living creatures in our lives are so tuned in. And play is such a wonderful reminder of that, I think.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm just adding these highlights here. I might come up here and add some coming out to here and little bits perhaps there. Definitely coming down here. And then definitely coming down there. Look at that, just popping that little moment. Subhashini says, I was watching, and Ravichandran was watching The Witch's Cat the other day and saw Simmons painting like a marathon. I love the painting. I love the part painting. Helps to learn a lot of the process and detail, especially for the beginners. Yeah, no, that the Witch's Cat was a marathon. That was like I can paint all day, but can't right now. And I do think that we're going to keep doing them even as I'm able to do marathon paintings, or we do paintings where I maybe record a large one and put it out as one individual painting. We're going to keep the multi-part paintings coming up pretty regularly, just because I think it allows you guys to enjoy a little bit more of the process. Just adding a little bit of highlight. Just really helps us to feel the flowers. And as I'm going to add a little more white. And perhaps a little more pink to the overall mix. If I feel like it's gone too pink, I can get into my ultramarine blue, interestingly enough, and get it back into a purple. But what I want is a very light value. There we go. And I'm wiping off my brush on a paper towel. And I'm coming over and loading up the paint really on the edges here. Adding little bits of light catching. Not quite as light as what we have through here, but pretty light. Heather C says, sorry I'm late, but I did remember to bring donuts. Well, thank you for the donuts. I appreciate them so much. Just popping the light down here. The important thing about this area is to really show the highlights in it. Maybe we add some little highlights up here, a couple of places, a little bit of dapply light. Up through there, just dappling the light. Seeing everybody visit. There we go. We're just dappling a little light. Loading up, dappling a little light. A little bit stronger through here. Playing with that. I'm looking up at you, but I'm also looking up at my reference because I have a camera that's facing down, and so I can see, well, not my reference, my actual painting. So what I get to see when you see me looking up and reflecting is I get to see what I'm painting. Because sometimes when you're sitting at something in an angle and you can't stand up and back away, you can't really see the painting. So John's giving me like one of those little teleprompter screens, but it doesn't have a teleprompter. It just shows me in real time what you guys are seeing, so I can see what you're seeing at home. And it's like I'm looking at you guys, which I think is also sort of fun. I can just strengthen these up a couple of places. Rinse out a little bit. I'm liking this quite a lot. Now I want to experiment with an idea, see how it works out for me first. I'm going to take a little bit of my quinacridone and a little bit of my Cad Red, the smidgiest smidge of my yellow. Come over to my purple. And I really want to highlight it. Lighten it a good bit. a smidge more of yellow. See if I can't add a little bit of this warmth in the light. We can. So this color, and let me swatch this out so you can see this a little bit. I'm going to swatch it on sheet page. Is a peachy little pink. Right, so it's a bit of a peachy little pink that I'm going to be touching just the tops of some of my flowers with. And I can improve the flow and increase the amount of paint by adding a little bit of my glazing liquid to it. So like the blue, this is just a color to add a little bit of light to the tops of the flowers that's a little warmer. Just in this one area. It'll come across here a little bit as well. Kind of showing this warm light coming up. A little bit through there. But mostly kind of popping through here, down this little cluster. Just dropping it through here. Just a little focus of light. And then maybe like down here a bit. Just where we think the sunlight might be more impactful. And I can rinse out. Take a lot more yellow, mix it in.
Thank you.
And grab my white and mix in. And come through here and add some little dappled light. See if I like that, and I do. A little bit through there. Be a little bit through here. And a little bit up into this bright area of light. Tapping down a little bit into that little light beam. So this is just little bits where the sunlight could be maybe brighter on a couple flowers. And if it gets to be too much, you can just come back with purple and mix it down. All right, let's rinse out and call this a step. Let's take in our painting, right? And make sure that we've got light and everything where we really, really want to have light. I like that. And now I'm going to grab my round brush. Now, any little tree trunks I need to clean up, any of that, I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to grab my little black. And I kind of over painted some of my little tree trunk here. So I'm going to come back and definitely clean that up. If I lost anything. And I might come here and kind of darken some of these lower trunks. Just the lower versions of them. You could even come in and do red and black. If you're like, oh, it wouldn't be black. You can take a little bit of your CAD red and black and come in and darken some of these. Kind of blending them up the trunk a bit. Sometimes I'll get my glazing medium involved so I have a better flow of paint. Just a little bit, giving some value and some depth to some of the lower parts of these little trees. I can even kind of inform some shading and anchoring at the base. It's a very nice thing that I can do. Paint in some of that there. Can also come along my path. Add some little edge shading to the path. Tapping up a little color up into it. And making sure I have some stronger shadows coming out. So that that corner turn is a little more like defined and shaded. Brushing up into my little tree there. So I'm just exaggerating, right? Now I'm going to grab a little bit of my yellow ochre and my cad yellow together. Mix in some white. And I might need to mix in even a little more white because I want a very light color. Let's exaggerate this path again a little bit. Take a little bit of my yellow, a smidge of my phthalo green. I might grab a little bit of white even. And make some little pop highlights of some green through here that maybe is caught. That's looking very nice. So now it's like a carpet, and we love when it feels like a carpet. I'm going to take that in, and I'm loving that. Now I want to dry everything so that I don't drag anything.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
Right. And I will let John chat with you for a second while I dry everything.
No, not done a lot of drying this one. It's been pretty straightforward, I think. It's been just a really nice painting with you guys. Having a nice day. Thank you guys for coming and joining us. It's like one of those, the multi-parters are, they take a little bit more steps, a little bit longer time to get done, but I enjoy it. I enjoy spending the time, getting the extra see the how it all comes together, seeing you guys multiple times. And we're going to be doing a couple more of these, but we have some more traditional one-part shows coming up here. So, don't forget to check those out too.
I think that we all agree that the light flare is one of our favorite parts of this painting. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to start my light flare with a round brush. My glass is definitely on. A little bit of my white and a little bit of my glazing medium. I'll come right here. Just make a nice little radial flare. Kind of letting my brush stroke flicker out. I think it's one of those times it's okay to exaggerate. So this is between a glaze and a dry brush, and I'm going to build it up slowly. And I think that's how I'm going to keep control over it. Go into a little more white. Just here towards the center is just a little more opaque. Now I want to dry all that.
Yeah.
right? Where we make it kind of warm and orange and sort of like try to get that lens effect, that flare effect that we have right here.
Yeah, I just gotta quick dry that off so you can get the next layer on there.
A lot of times white helps the subsequent colors pop up and be brighter and come through a little bit more. So it's just a good effect, especially if you're using student paints. This is a really, really good technique, especially if you're using student paints.
I'm going to put my round brush down for a second, and I think I'm going to look for my Deerfoot stippler, which should be washed and ready to go. If I did my work, which I did. Okay. Very important after every painting session to wash your brushes. So this is a Deerfoot stippler. It's called that because it's in the shape of a deerfoot. I have the 3/8 Princeton Select Deerfoot. You can find these like at Joann's and stuff, but again, shameless plug, you can also find them at my store. I'm going to grab a little bit of my yellow, smidge of my red, make kind of a yellow orange, and I'm going to get into my glaze as much as I can. And then I'm going to just glaze this right over the radial light that I have. So that started to knock it back into those orange ranges. Starts to break up these distant trees into that warmth and create that warmth in the background. I'm going to rinse that out, dry everything, and come back and then do the little white radial again.
I know.
Again.
The layers.
Again. Yeah, it is about the layers.
It's just one of those things when you're doing oh gosh,
The layers, all the layers, just reading the chat, getting caught up here. It's nice to see everybody hanging out in chat. If you haven't had a chance to join us in the live chat, I highly suggest it. It's one of those really fun places where you get to come and hang out with people and get to know them. So, something we really enjoy.
If you didn't know that there was a glazing layer or a pre-white layer or another layer, it could be really hard to get this lens effect. Because the camera lens is doing this, right? It's not something we generally see with our naked eye. But the lens effect sometimes feels so much like what we're seeing with our naked eye when we see the light coming through the trees that it feels more real than real. This time I'm going to be a little less big with it, but just still there in the center where there's this bright white heat. Look at that. Now, if we look at this overhead, what we should have is a nice light that is coming through the trees and brightening in our eyes and making like this gorgeous explanation of the light and dark that we're seeing. And honestly, guys, I think we got there. For hoop painting and all, I think we've done a painting that we can feel proud of, that feels like a bluebell forest, that looks like a bluebell forest we might have walked through or seen. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and get my kind of bright yellow-green color from earlier. and load it up on a small detail brush. And sign down here in the corner. I'm not going to be huge with my signature, but I do like to have a signature that people can read. Some people really like to be huge with their signature, and that is okay. This is art, and there isn't like a right or wrong. There certainly are fashions and trends. Like sometimes it's like, no signature at all is really in fashion. But I'm kind of old school enough that I still sign. There we go. You would know it was me. You would know it was you. And this is how we could paint a bluebell forest. So the next time you're out taking reference photos, what I really hope from these classes, I guess when we come back, I can give my monologue and billing. Big. What I really hope for these classes is that these techniques stick with you and become part of your technique set that you have for when you want to do a painting. So when you're out walking a forest, if there's a carpet of yellow flowers or bluebells or tulips and the light is streaming through the trees and it's shimmering to the point that you're having to shield your face a little bit as you walk, and you take a photo, how would you paint that photo? I get that asked that in my group. I have a group on Facebook, the Art Sherpa Official. Come by and join it. It's a great place to share your art and your steps and to get support from other new painters. But I get asked a lot in that group, how would I paint this wonderful photo I took like out at the lake or on my vacation or on my trip or just outside my property? And knowing how you could break down a complex scene like this into these kinds of steps. And this is sort of like, I like to think of it as long form. There are certainly faster ways to paint scenes like this where we paint more loosely and more expressively, but knowing how you can lay down complex dappled light is one of those things that as an artist is just wonderful for you. And I want you to be able to paint your own photos and your own scenes and your own ideas. So that's what I'm hoping is coming out of these longer lessons. Margaret Cat Rose said, I think I need more coffee. I usually only have 2 cups a day, but today I woke up before I am and couldn't get back to sleep, and I got up and painted. Yeah, that's a more coffee day if I ever heard of one. I also think I might need more coffee. Oh, this is interesting. Carol G says, I never sign the paintings from tutorials because they're not mine creatively. That is an okay thing to do. That's an okay thing to do. Another thing that you can do is put reproduction. You can do a little reproduction signature and then your thing. Sometimes on the back of the canvas, when you do a painting, like say you do Van Gogh, you can put on the back on the stretcher bars, reproduction of what Van Gogh is by. And then, because that's actually a whole skill to recreate paintings for the masters and put them up for sale. So there is actually some fun history and artist best practices that you can anchor into from artists that do reproductions. And that is technically what it is. When you study along with a teacher, you're doing reproduction of it, but we're still doing it together. And I love that about our journey, but that's a really good point. But regardless of whether you're assigning because it's your trip photo or you're, painting along with me, just knowing how you would do something like this, even as a one hoop painter, I love that for you. Now, I may have long paintings again where they're broken up into steps, but they're long. But I hope that these are also sort of showing you that even if I have to sit in one sitting and do it for 5 hours, you don't have to sit and do one painting in 4 or 5 hours. You're allowed to be like, you know what I like to paint? I like to paint for 15 minutes. That's a reasonable amount of time. Today, I was only able to paint for 20 minutes before this class, and that was what I could do. And that was just perfect because that was the amount of creative inspiration that I had inside of me. And there's just no right or wrong with the stuff. There's just what's right or wrong for you. I do hope to see your versions of the Bluebell Forest. It ended up being a slightly bigger, more complex painting than I was expecting. So we might do something a little more chill coming up as well. Something a little more like, less steps and stuff. I have to sort of get back to the drawing board. So as I'm doing that, these classes are essentially for you. So be sure you leave a comment and let me know the kinds of things you're wanting to see be on the channel. More multi-part paintings, more single, more one-hoots, more still lifes, more horses, more cats, dogs, just whatever you're in the mood to paint. And more than that, I want you to be good to yourself. Be good to yourself in the week. Be kind to yourself. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.